All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. So, for me to introduce this guest, I think it's best for me to read an email that was sent to me from a mutual friend of ours. His name is Justin Donald. Now, if you guys know Justin Donald, you know this guy's an absolute stud, incredible human being. Was a guest on an earlier episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast, extremely successful. So anytime he recommends somebody to me, I take it very seriously. So here's what he had to say. He goes, Charlie, I want to introduce you to this guy. He's the author of the upcoming book, The AI Driven Leader, Harnessing AI to Make Faster, Smarter Decisions. Everyone knows AI is the future, but most people just don't know where to start. People want to hear from somebody who's actually used the stuff and delivered results. So then that gets me thinking, well, what kind of results did this guy actually deliver? And he said, well, this particular guest, he scaled the last company he was part of from 750 million to 12 billion. So that was enough to get me to pay attention. He was the chief growth officer, so he had a direct contribution to this growth. And he was put in charge of AI. Now, AI will disrupt every industry. I don't care if you're in massage or agency or you name it, it is going to disrupt it. The bigger question is, how is it going to disrupt it? And what can you do to have AI your ally instead of your enemy? So, my guest, his name is Geoff Woods. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me.
I've been talking about AI now for going on 2 years. And in January of 2023, I made an announcement to my team and I said that AI is a condition of employment. You must use AI in your role. You have a few months to figure it out, or you won't have a position here anymore. Now, in the beginning, like people were just starting to hear about ChatGPT, so they really didn't know what that was. And
It had only been out for 2 months at that point.
right, right. So it seemed a little odd, but with AI, because of this exponential learning curve, I realized that if we waited 2 months, we're going to be so far behind the ball there. Even still, they're still in so much infancy right now that there's still time for people to jump in and not get too far behind the eight ball. Why do you believe AI is a future, and why should small business owners make this a must to build into their culture?
I believe that as a leader, your job is not to predict the future, but it's to prepare your company to survive a variety of different futures and thrive in spite of that ambiguity. When I saw AI for the first time, it was December of 2022. So ChatGPT had literally only been out for a month. I saw it as the next skill to master. Something in my bones said, I believe that this is going to change everything. But I wanted to validate that. A lot of leaders have seen it and said, I'll get to this eventually. And they're just too busy. They don't know where to start. And then they think they're falling behind. I made it a real priority. I said, if this has the chance to be disruptive, if this has the chance to be the future, then as chief growth officer of this company, which big company, about 100,000 people, I need to be able to validate this real quick. And here's what got interesting, Charlie. I started where I think a lot of people start, which is, can this help me write a better email? Can this help me with marketing copy or social media stuff? And the answer was yes, but it's cool that it can do it. But from a results standpoint, I'm going, this isn't going to move the needle. It took the company from 750 million to 12 billion. That was one company, by the way, of many that I was over. All of them grew. The smallest one was netting 100 million a year in EBITDA. So I'm not looking for, can we add another million here? I'm asking what's disruptive from a results standpoint without disrupting the organization itself. And I found myself asking, what are the things that as a leader I need to do exceptionally well that put us on a different playing field in the future? And that's when I came back to the thing that's been my strength for the last decade, which is driving strategic thinking with teams. Because your ability to think strategically is the difference between growing your business or going out of business. And so I started asking, how might AI help me elevate my thinking and make faster, smarter decisions? And once I cracked that code, Charlie, I was in India. I went there every quarter because the company was based there. And I was at the chairman's house and I showed him, I said, this is the future. And he goes, after when I showed him what I saw, he goes, I believe it. And I said, I think we need to drive this through all the companies. And he goes, yes. And I said, I think this is so important that you as chairman of the board need to own this at the board level. And he goes, no. How about you do it for me?
Amazing.
Which when he said that, I was like, yes. But then, so I committed. I said, I'm on it. I'll bring you back my plan. I left his house and I went, oh crap. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And this is when you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I've been very purposeful about surrounding myself with people who are where I want to be. Before I was the chief growth officer for Jindal Steel, I was the co-founder of the training and consulting company behind the book The One Thing. So my partner was Gary Keller, who built Keller Williams. So I've now worked with 2 billionaires directly. And one of the things I learned from Gary is that anytime you're hitting a ceiling in your life, you're missing a person. I was hitting a ceiling. He's tasking me to figure AI out for the company. I don't know how to do it. Who am I missing? That company is called Google. So I ended up partnering with Google, and every quarter when I was in India, I was at their headquarters and they're teaching me what the technology is, how you use it, how you identify use cases, how you tune models. And as I started driving it, I realized how deep this rabbit hole could go and said, this is the future and I got to build around this. So I wrote the AI driven leader and launched my company, AI Leadership.
And here's the coolest thing about AI. AI can teach you how to use AI. It can identify the gaps that you have and your skills and your abilities. Like, you just have to know how to ask the right questions. If you ask the right questions, you're going to get better answers.
And isn't that true in leadership generally?
Yeah. My son, and several people I'm sure have heard this before, especially our listeners, he's turning 18. And so he's looking at college and what his options are. And so we went for this nice long walk and we're going through everything. And I said, kid, let me tell you something. I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. Because when I was a kid, you had to go to college, you had to get all the, the degree and whatnot. And that was like your leg up in life. I said, but today, you don't need to know the answers anymore. And he says, wait, what? You have to know to ask the questions that other people don't know how to ask. And if you can do that, your advantage in life will be far greater than any book, any course, anything that you could take in a college class.
So true.
Isn't that crazy?
So true. You're a good dad.
When people think of AI, if they're very new to it, they think just like you talked about. It's like, write an email, write me an article, all this other stuff. I had a conversation with the founder of one of the top 10 franchise companies in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, another really successful dude, right? And so he was working on this other project and he said, hey, I'm trying to find the answer to this one thing. And I'd like to bring you on to find this answer. And don't worry, I'm guessing it's going to take about 6 months to figure it out. And I was like, hold my beer. Give me a couple hours. I'll get back to you by the end of the night. And he says, what are you talking about? That's impossible. There is no way. Look, I've done this so many times, blah, blah, blah. I said, I know. The thing is times have changed. You just don't know where to find the answers. But I have the question. And so we were able to pull personas. I'm like, who would be the people that would have this answer? And I pulled personas from, what I believe to be true and introduced them into AI. So I told AI, act as these particular people and then watch them debate. And they came up and solved the answer. And then I shared that with the founder. I'm surprised you didn't hear him scream from where you're at right there. He was so just floored that that could happen so quick. But that's a competitive advantage right there that a lot of CEOs and business owners, they're missing the ability to use that intelligence to solve problems and come up with better ideas.
I sat down with the chairman of a Fortune 500 company yesterday, and he looked at me and he said, Geoff, execution, we got that covered. Technology, we can build whatever we want. But strategic thinking,
Oh, yeah.
he goes, that's the thing that every single one of my C-suite leaders needs to do better. That is the most important thing. And we don't have enough time to do it. We don't have the data always accessible. We all have biases and assumptions that lead us in the wrong direction. And we all face pressure to deliver results yesterday. Those 4 things kill strategic thinking. And where most people are looking at generative AI as something to do tactical things, I just turned it on its head and said, if it's the 80-20 rule and 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your efforts, don't focus using AI on the 80% tasks that only drive 20% of your results. Let's focus on using it on the 20% priorities that drive 80% of the value. And that's been the backbone of my whole book, The AI Driven Leader.
So Talk to me about maybe some of the prompts or some of the tools.
Let me tell you some real use cases first so
Yeah,
people can understand what this means. Then I'll walk you through how you deliver this for yourself.
beautiful.
Okay. My approach to AI is strategy first, technology second. The way I drove growth of Jindal was strategy first. We may not even need technology. Tech is a tool to achieve your goals. It can accelerate it or it can distract you from achieving your goals. So you got to be strategic. So I was presenting to a group of CEOs and I asked them, give me your biggest problems in your business that if we could solve them, would unlock a new level of growth for you. One guy looks at me and says, I got one. I run a manufacturing company. I leased a whole bunch of equipment from this company in Japan. Things have shifted in my market and the debt structure is now killing me. I'm literally going to go out of business if this does not get restructured. I go, okay, I'm so sorry. That's tough. What have you done? And he starts walking through every single thing he had tried in the past, why it didn't work, and eventually said, you know what? Bottom line, this has gone all the way to the board of this company in Japan. But because they're publicly traded, they are refusing to restructure the debt because they're worried they'll lose face in Japanese society. I have no next step. We're probably going out of business. So here's a CEO that's facing a culture challenge, a Japanese culture challenge. He's up against the wall. There's no other options that he can see. Perfect use case for AI. So I pulled up ChatGPT in this instance and I wrote a very strategic prompt. I have a framework for strategic thinking prompts. I think of writing a prompt like a series of ingredients in a recipe. You don't use every ingredient, you don't use the same amount. So it's describe the problem, give context, assign a persona, ask AI to interview you to accomplish a task. Problem, context, persona, interview, task. Problem. I'm a CEO of a manufacturing company. I leased all this equipment from a company in Japan. Things have shifted in the market. The debt structure is now going to put us out of business if it doesn't get restructured. Here's the things we've tried in the past. It didn't work because it went all the way to the board of this Japanese company and they are refusing to restructure the debt because they think they'll lose face in Japanese society. I have no next steps that I am aware of. I'm probably going out of business. I typed all that in as the problem and context. Your role is to act as an investment banker with deep expertise in restructuring debt. Interview me by asking one question at a time, up to 3 questions to gain additional context. Then I want you to complete the task of generating 5 non obvious strategies I could deploy to get the board to restructure the debt. That was the prompt. Now let's pause real quick. One, this is not another Google. Number two, most people are treating it like another Google because they're going to it and asking questions and expecting answers and are disappointed when it's not an oracle. I don't do that. I give it tons of context. I assign a persona so that it can harness expertise that I do not have myself, i.e., an investment banker with deep expertise in restructuring debt. The unlock is turning the tables and asking AI to interview you.
I love that.
Have you ever done that?
I have done that. It's funny. The way that you structured it is awesome. What it makes me think about is how I would talk to an employee. And what's interesting is I was at a presentation, there was a bunch of AI panelists that were speaking, and I was in the audience and I stood up and I was like, I just want to make sure people understand one thing. Like, if you look at AI as a technology, you're already looking at it wrong and you're complicating things more. It's like, you look at AI as your most intelligent employee. It's a virtual employee, most intelligent. And when you talk to that intelligent employee, talk to it like you would be an employee and interact and give that feedback and what you like and what you don't like and go back and forth and what could they do better and push it. And as soon as you explained that prompt structure, I'm like, you know what? How is that any different from what you would tell an employee as a leader?
One of the most surprising benefits that I've experienced has been how this has elevated my communication with humans because I now think of communication as a series of ingredients and I have more structure and strategy to how I talk.
It's awesome, dude.
So let me tell you what happened with this. So I sent that prompt and AI immediately came back and asked, Do you have relationships with other influential executives in Japan that this board would respect? And I looked at the CEO.
Whoa.
Yeah. So why do you say whoa?
Because I mean, right there, the answer was in the question, number one, but it was like I didn't think about that.
And that's exactly what happened to the CEO. I looked at him and he went, whoa, I would have never thought of that. It understood 2,000 years of Japanese culture that we as Americans would not think of when it asked that question. And he
That's
goes, oh my gosh, I do. I wouldn't have thought of that. And so we fed it back to the AI model. And then it asked two more questions around how he had navigated Japanese society historically. And then it came back and said, here's your 5 non obvious strategies. Number one, it called the Saving Face Consortium. It said, you have enough relationships with other influential executives in Japan. Approach them to acquire the debt with really favorable terms. They'd be fools to say no to it. Your debt will get restructured and the board will save face. Charlie, I looked at him. His whole body language shifted and he's getting emotional. He
amazing.
looks at me and he goes, Geoff, I have not slept in 90 days. I have had no next step and I have been wrestling and grappling with the fact that I'm going out of business. And in less than 10 minutes, I have hope.
Yeah,
We texted a few weeks ago and he said, the ball is moving and I think this is going to get done.
amazing. Well done. Well done.
So when I say your ability to think strategically is the difference between growing your business or going out of business, there are things on a weekly basis as a leader that you have to think through that require processing power of your brain. I am telling you, the old way of solving problems and making decisions is doing it yourself. You seem smart, Charlie. How many books do you think you've read in your lifetime?
I don't know, maybe a few hundred.
Cool. What percent of that collective knowledge can you recall and apply right now?
Yeah, not a heck of a lot, that's for sure.
Probably 1% max. And you've been wildly successful with that. If you think of yourself as the thought leader and AI as your thought partner, not an assistant, but a partner,
Yeah.
these models have been trained on 200 million books worth of data. They can recall 100% of it in less than a second. So,
Hmm.
with your thought leadership, you can tap into this intelligence and harness it to solve your most complicated programs. I'm going to give you another one. I have an executive AI network called The Collective, where these are the decision makers in their company that are champions of AI. And we
Yep.
get off site several times a year to like strategic offsites to think strategically and share how we're using AI. This one guy, his name's Wyatt. He has built a very successful business flipping houses.
Okay.
And I asked him, hey, have you done your strategic plan yet for next year? And he goes, yeah, I just finished it. And I said, great, run this prompt. And I had him copy and paste his strategic plan into ChatGPT. And basically, he told ChatGPT that attaches my strategic plan. You know, my 10-year goal is to go from X to Y, but I also want to preserve quality of life and time with family. Here's my strategic plan for next year. I want you to act as an aggressive, growth minded board member by interviewing me, asking one question at a time to bulletproof my plan. Where am I spreading my focus too thin? What are the things I'm doing that I should not be doing? Are there things I'm not doing that maybe I should be doing that would allow me to achieve my goals with less effort? Once you've conducted a thorough interview and you think you have enough context, tell me what you like about my plan, tell me what you don't like about my plan, and tell me the top changes I should make to my plan. That was the prompt.
Wow.
It did an interview. It came back. And one of the things it suggested, it said, while your plan will help you get to your financial goal, ultimately it's going to violate your personal life goals.
Hmm.
My recommendation is that you stop flipping houses altogether and instead focus on acquiring multifamily real estate and the service-based businesses that surround it.
Wow.
It told him to blow his business up and focus somewhere else. So you know what he did with this? In the next 30 days, instead of getting another house under contract that would net him $10,000, He got a building under contract that he bought at such a good price, he instantly netted $1 million in equity
Amazing. Amazing.
because of one prompt.
Amazing. And you know, one of the ways that we've used it in a somewhat similar fashion is we'll upload the roadmap, the growth plan, and whatnot, and then ask it, what would stop, prevent, or otherwise slow me down from achieving this goal? And then you begin to identify different constraints that you may not have been aware of. And then you can ask it, so what is the plan to solve it? And then as you build the plan to solve it, then you can adapt the roadmap and all that other fun stuff. At the end, I always say, okay, now go back and reread all of our notes, all of our conversation, and make further suggestions for improvement. And it always comes back with something that's a little better than the last output.
Have you asked it, what do I not know about myself that you know that I should know as well?
I did that actually just recently.
Did you?
I did, and it was actually it was interesting.
That only works, by the way, if you've used it for a while and it gets to know you. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
I liked it, but I didn't like it at the same time because it told me certain things that I was like, I wish I didn't know that, about myself,
I loved it. It was so cool.
So these prompts and the different ways to use it, whatnot, is that covered in the AI driven leader book?
Well, the prompt ingredients is page 73. I have prompts throughout the entire book. And I even built a custom AI thought partner trained on the entire manuscript of the book. That you literally, when I give you prompts, I also give you a QR code that you can scan with your phone and it will launch this custom AI model that is specifically designed for strategic thinking and trained on the book. And it knows all the prompts.
And that's already available on Amazon?
Yeah.
All right. Well, as soon as we get off this line,
Amazon, Audible, ebook, the whole 9 yards, my friend.
So now you've talked a lot about ChatGPT. There was a period of time where I hadn't logged into ChatGPT for a while because Claude was by far my favorite.
Yeah.
It was just producing things at a much higher level. And then ChatGPT started getting more in favor. And now it kind of all depends. And sometimes I'll use Gemini or Grok or whatever it might be. So right now, like, what tools are you using and for what purpose?
So I'll tell you what I'm doing, but at a high level, I'm going to tell you the tool really doesn't matter. It's the person who wields it. So my recommendation is that you go on a journey of exploring which one is right for you. I started by having ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, Copilot. I had all five open on different tabs, and I would write a prompt in one and paste it into all just to learn how it was different. Now, I'm building a business in AI, so that I felt like that was worth my time. Probably isn't for you, but what I realized, I know the pros and cons of the different ones. I also know they're constantly going to change. What ended up happening, privacy matters to me
Yeah.
and the companies that we advise. I want to be able to upload my strategic plan. I want to be able to upload the financial statements. I want it to know what our strategy is or our competitive advantage in the long term through the actions we're taking in the short term. I do not want a model that's going to train on my data.
Hmm.
ChatGPT was the first to come out with a Teams account. This is not Microsoft Teams, it's ChatGPT Teams, where
Yeah.
by default it does not train on your data. To my knowledge, you can't stop Claude from training on your data. From my knowledge, you cannot stop Gemini from training on your data. Therefore, I don't use them anymore.
Hmm.
Even though I actually like Claude more than ChatGPT because I can't, to my knowledge, I can't get it to stop training on my data. I don't use it.
Oh, that's actually really good to know.
Yeah. So like I want it to know the manuscript of my book. I want it to know how I think, how I talk, what I say. I'm not going to do that. I'm not uploading the PDF of my book into something that's going to go out into the ether.
Though chances are it's probably found it somehow, somewhere.
It knows of me, but does it have the manuscript and can it train on it and create derivative work from it? No, thank you.
Mm, got it. Yeah, this is fascinating. So, small business owners, many of them, there's this sort of myth going around that says AI will replace employees. And I know a lot, and I work with a lot of like really just wonderful CEOs that put their team first and foremost, and they're very hesitant to push this on the team because they know that the team is hesitant, thinking that their jobs are at risk. So, where do you see AI playing and disrupting the workforce?
I wanted to have a good answer for this. And I found myself thinking, haven't we been here before? I went back and I researched many of the major technological disruptions, from the printing press to the steam engine, the assembly line, electricity, the internet. And I wanted to understand what were the patterns. Every time there was a major technological disruption, there were some jobs that were displaced and there were net more jobs gained. But what was most interesting to me was I came across a story about John D. Rockefeller. It's 1900. He's the chairman of Standard Oil and Company. It's the largest company in the world, wealthiest man in history. And he sees factories booming across the country. And with it, the need for industrial workers. But there was a problem. Our education system was not teaching kids the skills that were valuable for industrial working. He even went on record as saying, we don't need a nation of thinkers. We need a nation of workers. And so in 1902, he seated the General Education Board with $1 million, which is $37 million today, with one goal: to shift the curriculum of public education to create the skills required for industrial workers. Show up to work on time, take direction from a boss, memorize a set of steps, and do it as efficiently and as effectively as possible. Over the next 20 years, he ended up giving over $100 million to reshape the public education system, and it worked. Here's the problem with that: it's still our education system today. And what I realized is that we actually had to set aside the skills that made us human to meet the needs of the machine in the Industrial Revolution. When it was craftsmen, you had to do strategic thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, creation. But when you had to meet the need of the machine, that all got set aside. I actually think AI is going to return us to what makes us us. And the reason I can say that is that most of people's time, if you actually thought about what most people do throughout the day, they bounce between meetings, emails, and the 80% tasks on their to do list that only drive 20% of the results. It's very tactical. AI can already augment or automate half of what people do. This scares people. I think it's a gift, because what became clear to me in my research is that your job is nothing more than skills you apply and processes you follow. AI does not take your job. It changes this, or technology does not take your job. It changes the skills that are valued and the processes that are followed. 6 out of 10 jobs that exist today did not exist in 1940. So you may still have the same job in 5 years, the same title with the same company, but the skills you apply and the processes you follow will be different. My advice is change is going to happen. You have a choice to make. You can choose to have a growth mindset where you view this as an opportunity to develop more valuable skills and to adhere to more valuable processes, or you can have a fixed mindset where you will cling to the way things used to be. But it's a choice.
You know what's interesting? So one of the things that we've told our clients to do is use a prompt. Have every member of your team use a prompt. We'll use an example of a salesperson and say, okay, please familiarize yourself with my company, blah blah blah, and the industry and so forth. And then, as a account executive for this company, how will B2B sales change in my role by the year 2028 or whatever that? And it'll turn around and it'll say, here's how, it'll be disrupted and change and so forth. And say, okay, what skills, talents, and abilities do I need to develop in order to remain relevant? And so it just says, okay, this is what you need to do. So it creates this plan. It says, this is where your job's going to be in danger. This is where it's going to be disrupted. These are the skills and whatnot that you need to improve. And it's really fascinating because everyone, whether it's an administrative assistant, a salesperson, a sales manager, whatever, it's not only just forecasting how their role will be disrupted, it's also indicating how the industry itself will evolve and change. And it allows people to start thinking further ahead and start thinking about what the landscape might look like instead of assuming that my business today is going to stay the same. And just one last example, I used to say for the longest time, AI will disrupt every single role except for maybe something like massage, because I'm just thinking to myself, how is that going to happen? And then, one of my clients, she runs the the most successful massage studio in New York City, and she has a massage bot that's all AI based. She has most of her businesses hand masseuses, but the fact that now you can do it has great NPS score and whatnot. So it's like everybody has the risk of being disrupted.
One of the things I keep this on my desk, and it's, when this would be my advice to anybody listening, the smallest action you can take after this episode that will have the largest impact is I want you to get a sticky note and a Sharpie and write the question, how can AI help me do this? I literally keep this sticky note on my desk. I would say, today, get a sticky note with a Sharpie, write, how can AI help me do this? And literally put it on your desk or on your computer. Because if you ask that question once a day, you will naturally start searching for potential use cases. And if you approach, I genuinely approach with curiosity. Will AI work? I have no. Will AI help with massage? I don't know. Let's try it. The greatest baseball players of all time strike out more than 6 out of 10 times. You're not going to hit a home run or even get on base every time you write a prompt. So don't expect to. But if you start deploying it and testing it, you'd be blown away. I literally just met with the director of operations for a clean skincare company, and they're amping up their production for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And I said, "What's your biggest problem?" And he said, "I'm looking at the volume we have to produce in the next month or 28 days. We're 120,000 units short based on our capacity, and I got to solve it." And I literally held this sticky note and said, "Have you ever thought about having AI help solve it?" And he goes, "What?" And I literally said, problem, context, role, interview, task. And just started interviewing him. And he's describing, here's the problem. We have to do this and this and this. Here's our constraints, blah, 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 blah. For context, this is our company. This is our product. This is the square footage that we have here about how much time it takes. And then I said, your job is to act as an expert in throughput optimization and theory of constraints, to interview us by asking one question at a time, up to 4 questions to gain additional context. And then I want you to generate 5 non-obvious solutions we could deploy to ensure we meet our production needs by this date. And he looked at me and went, "It can do that?" I went, "Let's see." Sure enough, it spotted something. Like, his solution was he was going to do a contract manufacturer that could do the 120,000. The first question that AI asked was, how confident are you and how have you validated that the contract manufacturer you're talking to actually has the capability to do the 120,000 units? And I looked at him and he went, "Oh crap. I actually don't know. I'm just assuming."
Great.
And based on that, his action is, not only does he need to validate that, but he needs to line up 2 more as a plan B and a plan C.
Amazing. Now, let me ask you, I know we're pushing up against the clock. So they just made this announcement that now with Claude, you can actually take action in your computer. So you could say, I want you to research this, fill out the form.
Oh, so they've woven agents into it?
Right, exactly. So right now it's been a limited beta release, but agents are coming in. It's faster than I anticipated. Many of them don't understand what agents are.
Yeah, you're talking over their head. So right now, most of these AI models, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, it's just a text box that you talk to, but you can't say, "Great, now take this and send it to me in an email," or "Help me identify the right flights to take and pricing." Great, book the flight. So text to action. There's no action yet. All these companies are working that, and that's what an agent is an AI agent. Is a An AI agent can take an action on a very specific thing. That is absolutely the future, and it may be here now. I think it's going to be a gradual rollout, but it's absolutely the future. And you just got to think Tony Stark and Iron Man, where he's talking to Jarvis, and Jarvis is not only able to talk to Tony Stark, but he's able to take actions and do things. That is very much the near future. You asked me a question early on about why is it so important to do this now. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, recently I saw a video of him that he said, we are going to be living in a fundamentally different world in the next 5 years. Not 10, 5. Everything we know about how we do life is going to be different. And then he walked through all the reasons why, agents being one of them. And my aha is this is the wake up call. If you're a leader who believes AI is the future, but you haven't known where to start and you think you're falling behind, it's time to prioritize this. Because if I told you that everything you know about the future and the future that you're going to be operating in from a business standpoint is going to be different, you better get going now. Because here's what you think about a hockey stick growth curve. It's flat for a long time until it's not, and then it goes supersonic. My hypothesis is that there is a company in your industry that is either starting right now or has already begun to figure out how to use AI. You're not going to see anything for the next 12 to 36 months because they're going to be on that flat part of the curve, but suddenly they're going to go supersonic. And that's when I think companies are really going to wake up and go, we got to get started. But what they won't realize is that the game at that point is already over.
So, because we're pushing up against the clock, I'm going to ask you my favorite question.
Hmm.
My favorite question is, this is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What is your biggest, best tip for our listeners who want to take their business beyond seven figures?
Surround yourself with people whose business is beyond seven figures.
That's great. Actually, and what was that quote you said, that
You're
something,
the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
and what was that one person thing that you said? Your solution to your problem is like,
Oh, yeah. Anytime you're hitting a ceiling in your life, you're missing a person. And another angle, you're only one person away from becoming who you want to become. Oprah Winfrey was not Oprah Winfrey until she met Jeffrey Jacobs, her attorney. The Beatles weren't the Beatles until they met George Martin, their manager. Walt Disney wasn't Walt Disney until he brought in his brother, Roy Disney. Sometimes you're only one person away from achieving what you want to achieve. And for me, when I look at my life, I went from Xerox to medical device sales, wanting to start a company, had no idea how. I was one person away. His name was Jay Papasan because he co-authored the One Thing with Gary Keller, and then the three of us co-founded the company. Jay taught me how to think. Gary taught me how to think bigger. Then I sold my stake in the company. I was one person away. His name's Naveen Jindal. Look him up. I mean, insanely wealthy guy in Asia who runs Jindal Steel. I then I coached him for a while, but then going in house, the amount of authority that he gave me was insane. Then I was only one person away when it came to AI, and that ended up becoming Google and the team there. And so I am constantly asking, who's the person I want to become? And how do I surround myself with people who are exhibiting the type of skills and thinking that I want to exhibit to become who I want to become? And honestly, I mean, especially when it came to AI, I remember when I was writing the book and even building the company, starting the company for AI leadership, I was like, I actually don't want to be the guy with all the answers. I want to be the guy with all the questions. And I found myself asking, how can I make part of my business model standing in the flow of information and surrounding myself with the innovators of the future, which is why the backbone of the business ended up becoming the collective. I'm surrounding myself with people who are AI driven leaders in their company. Like, they're the executive decision makers who believe AI is the future. They're committed to championing it. I'm building that community where we get off site and we think strategically together and we share how we're harnessing AI. Because I might be the number one authority in the world when it comes to AI for strategic thinking, but I am not an expert in all things AI.
mm-hmm.
And so I want to surround myself with other leaders who are going like, Charlie, there are absolutely things that you can teach me, and there are things that I can teach you. So how do I facilitate that? That's what it is.
I love it. So, dude, tell us a little bit more about your company if we want to learn more. Give us the quick summary on your book.
The book is The AI Driven Leader, Harnessing AI to Make Faster, Smarter Decisions. It is all about showing leaders the strategic use cases that you can start to go from 0 to 1 to make faster, smarter decisions. It's written for leaders. I have prompts throughout the book. I have pictures. I even underline the important sentences. So like if you had a highlighter, I've already done it for you. It's crazy. The company is AI Leadership. We help leaders think more strategically by harnessing AI as a thought partner so they can accelerate growth and build a competitive advantage. So the collective is the heartbeat of it, where it's this collective of AI driven leaders where we share all of our knowledge, we do consulting, and we're in the process of building out a technology product that'll drive all of it.
And what's the URL of that company?
AIleadership.com.
AIleadership.com. Geoff, and this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And we've talked a lot about AI, the importance of strategic leadership. One of my notes that I wrote down that I'm really looking forward to testing is this prompt structure that Geoff talked about. Number one, describe the problem. Number two, context. Number three, the persona. Number four, have it interview you by asking one question at a time. And then number five, then the task. And you obviously want to give it the instructions, not to tell you the most obvious, but have it share the least obvious.
And I'll give you my top five, or not top five, my top tasks.
Yeah.
So here's the problem. For context, here's what you need to know about my company. I want you to act as this type of person. Interview me by asking one question at a time, up to 3 questions, 4 questions, 5 questions. Give it a limit. Otherwise, it'll interview you all day.
Okay.
So that you have additional context. Then I want you to complete the task of generate 5 non-obvious solutions is one. The other is tell me what you like about my approach, don't like about my approach, and the top changes I need to make to my approach. So, for example, I literally took the PDF of the cover of the book, uploaded it, and described my ideal reader and said, as that reader, I want you to give me feedback on what you like about the book, don't like about the book, and the top changes I'd have to make so that you would buy it for yourself and every person in your company. And it literally came back and gave me feedback. I did not agree with all of it. Some of it I did. And I had my designer make the changes. I ran that 4 times until it said, I like your book.
So that was, you said there was non-obvious shout outs, what you like, don't like, top changes. Was there anything else?
Dude, this is when it's up to you to figure out what are the creative ways you want to use it. But I'm giving you low hanging fruit of
Amazing.
the task of generating not 5 solutions, because then it's going to tell you what you already know. 5 non obvious solutions, 5 non obvious strategies, 5 non obvious ideas. Or here's my paper, or here's the message I'm sending to the team, but I want you to tell me what you like about it, don't like about it, and the top changes I need to make to it.
Brilliant, dude. I love it. All right. So remember, and then there's this other question that he says, how can AI help me do this? Write that down. He puts in a post-it note. If somebody like Geoff puts it in a post-it note to remind him about this every day, I think it's probably something worthwhile for all of us to consider. So that's Geoff Woods, author of The AI Driven Leader and AIleadership.com. Now, for more tips, strategies, and information, also on how to grow your business faster, more predictably, and less dependent on you, check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gadet with my new friend Geoff Woods, and I will see you in another episode.